Hi, this is Matt with the Intergalactic Herald. Welcome to my Star OS Week in Review podcast. This is podcast number 78. Any articles or videos mentioned can be found on my website at intergalacticherald.com. Look for news recap number 127. So just a quick summary of things I'll be discussing on this podcast today. I'll talk about a little bit about the past week's Metaverse Nomads live stream, some issues about crew cards, actually a lot of things about crew cards, and a little bit on the DAO Council. But before I get into that, just wanted to mention a couple Star House projects that I have. One is my merch store, intergalacticgear.com. Intergalactic Gear, obviously. It's open for business. So far, I just have some Star House mugs on there, but I will be extending the product line when, I decide to focus my energy on that with summer and actually getting distracted by another Star Atlas content project. I think I may have mentioned, but I'm creating a couple new guides for my Intergalactic Herald website to help beginners get going. So that's kind of taken a little more precedent. But if you go to intergalacticgear.com, if you're interested in a mug, great. If not, there is a merch survey there you can fill out, and that'll actually help me with some ideas for future merch to create for the store. And also, I need to probably rethink what I'm calling it. I used to be calling it a non-guild guild, kind of thinking of it more as an alternative community if you're not interested in the Star Atlas Discord. It's called Intergalactic Coalition. It's at intergalacticcoalition.com. There's an interest survey if you're interested in that, but basically it's an idea of creating a different type of community for the Star Atlas community. That's more about asynchronous communications, not really the chat format that Discord does. So more of threads, and you can get email alerts for things you're interested in, so you can only check when you want to. It will be a paid community due to the software that I need to handle all that stuff. But again, you can go to Intergalactic Coalition and fill out intergalacticcoalition.com, and you can fill out an interest survey. So let's get into the bulk of the content. So this past week, and again, just for anybody who's listening new, I always review the week in review, hence the title, Week in Review. So Metaverse Nomads always does their weekly live stream early Sunday morning for me on the Pacific Coast, but again, time zones are different. And this time, they too were talking about the crew launch, which it's kind of hard to remember exactly when everything came out, but the crew launch was over a week ago. And that Sunday, Witticus, one of the presenters, I don't know what terms to use, content creators, had some actually very excellent, and I'm going to call it constructive criticism about the crew launch. But I was very impressed, one, that he had a slide deck of different things. So it was very well thought out. I really appreciate that level of specificity to what he was presenting. So I would definitely, if you're interested in some great, again, constructive criticism about the crew launch, some of the things that were definitely misses, please check out the Metaverse Nomads one. I have a link to it. If you go to my website, intergalacticherald.com, look for news recap number 127. A couple of things that he did bring up that were highlights. Again, it was all great content, but one was making sure that the crew launch was a functional minimum viable product. Now that's a term in entrepreneur businesses, marketing, that everything's ready to go. And again, he made some great points. One, it wasn't available on Tensor. Now I'm still trying to figure out exactly, I think I get that Tensor is some third place we can trade, but I don't know why, again, that is in our own marketplace, but it's, again, much more about NFTs. So, and I think I already saw, Metaverse Explorer said he was going to do a video, and I think Beyond the Horizon might have already published one this weekend that I haven't listened to. So I just don't know what Tensor is. Why it is, but definitely it was talked about it would be available upon the crew launch, and it wasn't. The other thing, and I kind of forgot about this, they were talking about having all these backstories of the characters, and there wasn't any. So those do feel like something that should have been quote unquote a minimum viable product. The other thing, and I've mentioned this before, that Witticus also mentioned, that there was no onboarding for new people, and I totally agree with that, because to even get a crew pack, let's say you were given one on one of the collaborations, and assuming you're crypto friendly, which that's fine, you'd still have to have created a profile within the Star Atlas website to then and picked a faction, which you don't know anything about because you're new, and then you would have been able to open your pack, but I'm not sure, again, and then you had to pick which faction in there you wanted, but it wasn't the faction you'd picked before. So, forgetting even the whole issue of how you couldn't move the crew into Sage, but again, just for new people. So I think that was all great. And again, if you want to get all the details of that presentation, do check out the Metaverse Nomads one. There was an announcement in the Star Atlas Discord that they were delaying adding crew to Starbase because they had some existing issues that need to be fixed first, so it was delayed 1 week. But those issues basically overwhelmed, I think, the fact that wasn't there. And they did have their Atlas Brew, which is usually on Wednesday, where they talked about it. And there's some great announcements in the Star Atlas Discord, so I'm not going to summarize, or I won't go into too much. But basically the crew... Well, actually, I'll leave it to later because I actually have it in my quote-unquote state of Star Atlas, so we'll kind of skip over that. But anyways, the Atlas Brew went over those crew pack changes, and then they basically opened some crew packs. Additionally, they did announce that the DAO Council candidates have now been made official, and there is something in the Star Atlas Discord that lists those. So if you're curious there, I'd probably need to go back and figure out. Oh, but they said they're going to have the next Atlas Brew where each candidate's going to talk, so that's fine. Because I don't like how much time till the next voting. Anyways, but one thing I realized, and I guess that was obvious, but maybe now it's kind of sinking in, that the votes for the council members are going to be based on your Polis voting power levels, your PvP levels. And when I skim the list of some of the names, I think some of them, I think it's fair to classify them as Star Atlas whales. And it made me realize that if they have a whole bunch of ships, they may or may not bought a whole bunch of Polis, and if they had and they locked it, isn't it pretty much mean they can just vote themselves into the council? So again, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, and I haven't really been following very closely, especially now after the DAO proposals have all been approved, and now we're into the council thing. And anyway, but again, it just made me think just initially, like, wait, and maybe it's partly because at least the United States right now, we're right in the middle of a major election campaigning cycle, and all the talk about voting and counting your vote and all that stuff, but won't get into politics. But it realized that with the PvP Polis voting power levels that you get from locking, that it does skew way toward, well, whales. And if the whales are nominating themselves to be on the council, and then they can basically elect themselves. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see how it all moves out. So anyways, just, again, not enough information, but just popped in my head, so I wrote it down. But anyways, let's get into kind of the state of Star Atlas, because this will kind of talk a little more about the crew rollout. So first thing I wrote down was, why did they release it now? And I think I've recalled in previous interviews that CEO Michael Wagner had said that basically they're just releasing stuff when it's done. Now, can't quote him exactly, but it kind of felt like they're just pushing stuff out. So whether or not it could have used more polish or whatever. And again, I think it was mentioned that, sorry, I got to make sure this wasn't, it was in the Atlas Brew, not the Foundation Room. Well, anyway, I'll just stick with that because I can't remember where I heard it. But that's what he had said before. So I kind of like, okay, so it came out. But I also thought they were targeting mainstream gamers. But I don't know anymore. I thought so, but I'm just not sure, looking at how the crew was rolled out, that there was much talk about mainstream gamers other than maybe reaching out to other Solana communities. So, but overall, and again, I think I have some links to different, well, you can just watch Metaverse Nomads and you'll get most of it right there. I think Beyond the Horizon probably put out a video in Metaverse Explorer too. But I have to admit, it was kind of disappointing, but it was mainly because there was so many issues. And again, there was maybe reasons why there were issues and stuff like that. But I kind of just wondered if this was just potentially a result of the current team size. There's just not enough people doing this stuff. So I don't know. But that note was, to myself, was written before the next stuff. So what I wrapped that kind of first thought up was, again, in the end, and I've been using this in some of my beginner videos, that again, this is pre-alpha early release. That maybe, again, we just need to lower our expectations and, that doesn't go good. But then just wait a couple of days and things change. So apparently there were a lot of people talking about the images for the MUD crew members weren't that aesthetically pleasing. Again, art is, to me, always subjective. So I don't know. Yeah, I really don't know. I mean, you could pro and con if it looks good or not. But anyways, it doesn't really matter because they upgraded it. and now we're in episode 1 of the images. And yeah, I guess they look better to me, at least on my crew. A few of them, my own crew, stood out and like, man, that looks kind of cool. They just were the common people and not the epics. But there was kind of talk in the Atlas brew that, well, now the new images should be that common should look common and higher ones should look better. And I guess I kind of leave it at the end of the day. We're talking art, visuals. I mean, it's always going to be in the eye of the beholder. But, well, anyways, I'll get to that in a second. So one, I do want to make sure to pass on when the team does well to call that out. So I think the communication for this change was very good. It was a very lengthy announcement. It was focused on improving the product. So, I mean, again, if we say that, it didn't roll out really well and there were lots of feedback given and a couple of days later a change is made, I mean, kind of isn't that what we asked for? But people were still upset because now their new crew didn't look like their old crew and their old crew looked better than the new crew, even though I think we have access to both images. So I don't know. At this point, it's kind of like, what is that? Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I don't know anymore. So to end this, I'm going to say there's basically, in my opinion, 2 ways to look at this going forward. One, there were rollout issues that were fixed. So never jump on the thing right away. Just wait to, things to settle down. Again, I've always had the thing within IT. If it's beta, I don't want to touch it. So this is alpha. So, who knows? But it does, on the other hand, kind of fit this pattern of rushing rollouts, poor communication, and missed expectations. So I don't really know which is the way forward or not. And maybe, again, in the end, it doesn't matter because it's stuff. And we got crew now. So there you go. So anyway, so that's sort of my state of Star. So just a quick update on my journey, which, again, if you've been following along, is basically trying to mine 1 million of each of the raw materials. And that gave me some experience with mining, movement, and scanning, and getting all those back, and then using the Sly Assistant tool. So all that was great. I was able to move back all the final material, which I think was diamond, before we were forced to disband our fleets to get ready for the Sage improvements for crew, but then that was delayed. So fortunately, I still made it in time. So everything I moved back, disbanded my fleet, moved everything back into faction fleet, and I still have been interested in figuring out a little more on the crafting and the Starbase upkeep and upgrading, but given that we know for sure Sage is going to be altered due to crew and crew is related to crafting, I'm just going to be patient on this because part of it is to create some new beginner videos, training videos, but until we're sure, doesn't mean. But related to Sage in general, as it stands now, I have to admit, I'm just really not interested in it anymore. It was fine to do that goal. As I mentioned in some of the earlier podcasts, it wasn't economically. I mean, I spent a whole lot more in resources, particularly fuel, for just raw materials that even to make fuel would have, so it did not pencil out on an ROI, but I now have those for stockpiling, which was kind of my purpose. But I think the real big thing is, and I've had this as a common thread, is about time. And yeah, Sly Assistant did a lot more to speed that up, but I still had to do things. I still had to monitor it, fix it when it broke, which could have been, again, blockchain issues or whatever, move stuff around, rethink how to move to the next one. So, I mean, if I was just doing one supply chain, I would have figured it out, and then it would have been much more routine. But in the end, that takes time, and the time needs to go towards some goal. And at this point, from my perspective, I don't know why I would be in playing Sage. There is no goal. Materials don't do anything. And I guess I should caveat that I know there is a goal in Sage, which is to get the LP, which gets you Atlas. And I'm sure the idea is you can generate more Atlas within Sage and can in faction fleet. However, I'm not interested. It's just not interesting to me. I did actually get tempted when I saw something about, I forgot there are actually 2 ships available within Sage still. I think it's the Max Hog and the Mamba EX. And I was actually starting to toy with the idea of, hey, well, I mean, it's a ship. I think it's a pretty decent sized ship. I could work to that. And then I actually check a tool which has crafting patterns. And so you can actually determine, well, if you bought all the resources or craft it. Anyways, you have some number calculations. But I was like, well, but I already got some raw materials. Maybe I could just reuse those. I mean, why not? And so I was kind of getting like, well, hey, I kind of like that. That's a perfectly good goal. I get a ship out of it. And to be honest, that is kind of what I'm thinking Star Atlas should be about. I mean, there's so many aspects to it, exploration, the political side, conquest, combat, all of that. But the idea of putting time in, because again, it would be time. Again, there's some resources, but I don't have a problem. And you'll find out if you watch my video. I don't have a problem saying put $20 in a month to, pay for Solana fees or whatever. So again, it's all fine. But then it dawned on me, there's no guarantee that ship will be available by the time I get done because it's not really supposed to be there. So now I'm kind of like, you know what? Just forget it. So I'm going to take a little bit of a break. Again, I got my video series I want to pump out, starting to release daily videos on YouTube, and then I got put on my website. So, I got something to do. I could get back to my merch store. But anyways, long-winded way of saying, Sage just doesn't do it for me anymore. I did it. If there was a goal, like, hey, maybe crafting a ship, that'd be great, but I want to make sure the ship's always there. So that's where I'm kind of at right now. But again, this is just my play style. Might not be yours. Take it with a grain of salt. So anyways, thanks for listening. Let's just wrap up again. If I'm always interested in podcast guests, so if you're a member of the community, another content creator, team member, that'd be great. Love to have a chat. We could do an interview. We could talk about the week in review. So definitely go to intergalacticherald.com. Go to my contact page. Send me a message there. I'd love to get in touch with you to see if there's some opportunities to do that. And then again, if you're interested in Star Atlas merch, either to purchase, i.e. some mugs, or just give me some feedback, please go to intergalacticgear.com, fill out the merch survey there. And again, if you're interested in helping to start another Star Atlas community, less about chat, more about conversations, easier to come in and out of things, get email alerts, please go to intergalacticcoalition.com, fill out my interest survey. And that's pretty much wraps it up. So we'll see what the week ahead brings for Star Atlas. But anyways, that was a week in review. Hope you have a great week ahead. This is Matt with Intergalactic Herald.